With a huge miss on the non-farm payrolls for the month of April and the unemployment rate ticking in the wrong direction, it's going to put the Fed in a very sticky spot. What does that mean for next week? But before we get into that, there is the closing bell with the S&Ps finishing up 30 points. You can see we're ending the week on a positive note. We came into this week expecting 65 points and we're coming about 14 points shy from that upper edge. You can see Monday we were positive, however Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday we were negative. However, we ripped from Thursday close and we carried over into Friday's session. When we just take a look at this thing from the S&P futures, you can see we got a nice pop at that 8:30. We pulled back, and then right out the gates, we just ripped to the upside. We look at this from a daily, and you can see the S&P 500 is breaking to the upside and closing at all-time highs. Now, I'll come back to the S&P 500 in a bit to discuss next week's expected move, but let's move on over to the Nasdaq and see what happened in technology today. And we take a look at the Nasdaq, and we can see it finished today up about 0.85%. After having 3 red candles, we're finishing Thursday and Friday in the green. I want to zoom in and take a look at this eruption. At 8:30, we just exploded in the Nasdaq due to that jobs number miss. Now, you might be wondering, does this carry into next week? And if so, how much higher can the Nasdaq go? Well, for that, we throw it on the expected move and we take a look at it. You can see this week we went past the 1 standard deviation. We held up on 1.5. However, we're finishing the week negative. When we go into next week's session, look for 13,989, about 11 points shy from 14K as our upper edge, and look for 13,434 to play our lower edge if this is just a pump fake rally. But I want to point out, when this economic data came out, the bonds just erupted. And when we take a look at these bonds, you can see we hit up to 160. However, we're wicking very hard. Just looking at this intraday, bonds rallied so hard, however, quickly came back down, sitting at a 158. We just look at the bigger picture here. It's a false breakout in the bonds. What does that mean for the TNX? Well, 10-year yield got down to 1.5%. However, we're back up to 1.57. Taking a look at it intraday, you can just see we got whacked down. However, we're quickly recovering from where we were in yesterday's tape. So the bonds will be interesting to watch in next week. With this failed breakout, potentially could be a bad sign for the Nasdaq. But when we take a look at the Russell 2000, finishing the day up 1.25%. It was our best index on the day. However, for the most part, it's going nowhere, just kind of consolidating since beginning of February. However, over in the Dow Jones ripping to the upside, up 250 points today and closing at all-time highs with the S&P 500. So let's take a look at the volatility futures and see what's going on. Maybe that can give us a better read going into next week. And when we take a look at these VIX futures, they're down a little under 7%. When we take a look at the VVIX, it's down 1.25%. Back underneath the 110, we look how it traded. You can just see we whacked down, we kind of found a floor, and we're just kind of hovering here. So the VVIX wasn't ticking up into the close. However, those bonds selling off is a concerning factor because in order to go higher, I think the Nasdaq needs to get going. And when we just take a look at the Nasdaq, you can see it's not quite at all-time highs yet. And if it does get there, it's going to pull a lot of our indices higher. But let's take a closer look and see what happened today across the board in our sectors. And we take a look at our sectors. The best performing sector today was the energy sector, up almost 1.8%. It's putting in a beautiful cup here. Are we going to potentially break out next week in the XLE? We'll have to monitor it. But what a strong trend up here in the energy sector. Right behind it was the software stocks. Software stocks have been hammered since the beginning of May. Can't find a green candle to save its life. Got whacked yesterday and recovering up 1.25% today. However, it's still closing down on the day. We take a look at the industrials. It was up over 1% today and put a new all-time high in. Just notice the volume here in the industrials, just booming today in the industrials. Right behind it was the XLK technology stocks. However, they were up 0.86%. It still has a lot of catching up to do to reach those all-time highs. And we take a look at the healthcare sector. Healthcare today put a new all-time high. Just look at the volume this week in the healthcare stocks. Getting a nice boost and closing at all-time highs. Look for this to continue into next week. Next, we'll move to the financials. The financials have been secretly sliding higher. Just look at this trend higher. putting in a new all-time high in the financials and some big volume backing it up. It's a good sign to see other sectors outside of tech do their role. It makes the market go up a whole lot easier when we're not relying on stocks like the big five that closed flat today. You can just see some huge volume coming out of this thing and just can't get going to save its life. We'll have to monitor what the big five wants to do because they are very big. These guys make up over $8 trillion when you add Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Facebook. You throw Tesla in the mix, and these guys are massive. So we'll have to see what they do in next week's session. But again, I think the bonds have a big role in next week's tape. But overall, all our sectors finished in the green today. So it's a good sign if you're a bull, and we'll expect to see if that can carry over into next week's tape. But before we get into our commodities and our dollar, let's take a look at our SPX and see what the expected move is going into next week. So we go over to the SPX and we hit the trade tab and we're going to look 7 days out. 7 days out, the options market's pricing in a $64.31 move. Let me draw these levels in and we'll discuss next week's levels. So with just about 64 points of move, last week was 65. So we're hanging out in this 60-point range. You can just take a look. The last 3 weeks, we just kind of been consolidating for the most part. Can we get that breakout and head higher? And if we can head higher, look for 4,296 to play the upper edge. Call it 4,300, a nice round number. However, if this is a fake breakout, 64 to the downside would take us to 4168. Look for that level to play some strong support if this rally is not for real. But overall, we'll have to see if the momentum can carry into next week's tape. But let's take a look at our dollar index and see what happened across the board in our commodities. And taking a look at our dollar index, we can see it's down 80 basis points, a huge leg down in today's tape due to that economic data. Can this trend continue? I think it potentially could find a floor around this 90. It's a relatively strong level. I don't think we're just going to blow right through that. But as for our commodities, we take a look at crude oil. It was up ever so slightly, about 20 basis points, so it didn't really benefit from the weakened dollar. But I'll tell you what did benefit today, and that was gold. Gold seeing a beautiful breakout, back-to-back days, some nice volume coming into these futures, finishing the day up 0.93% at 1830. This 1840 level will be a hard hurdle to climb. We'll have to see if gold can continue higher, but it's going to come down to the backs of the dollar. What is the dollar going to do? Is it going to stabilize? Potentially, we could be stabilizing up in this level in gold. As you can see, we have some history in this price range. My guess is gold moves slow. We probably consolidate up in this low 1800s level. But as for Bitcoin, we take a look at Bitcoin today, up over 3%. We're still over that $1 trillion line. And let's take a bit closer at some of my charts. So we pull up some of my charts. This is the Coinbase chart. Taking a look at the Coinbase chart, first line of hurdle is 59.4. We'll look to get over that level this weekend. However, when we take a look at our Binance chart, you can see this 57.9 is a lot of resistance. We failed 1, 2, 3, and we're at our fourth time. However, when I look at my lazy bear indicator, this thing has some room to go higher. So if we can get above this 58K and hold, look for the next level at 59.4 to place some resistance and ultimately that round 60K. But when we take a look at it on Bitstamp, there's nearly nothing going on here. However, I want to zoom out to the daily and just take a look. We're coming very close to this crossover on the 14th. I've been stressing this crossover. Whether we sit right around 60K and then that crossover hits and it just erupts us, we'll have to monitor it day by day. I'll have my crypto breakdown on Tuesday, but this is something that I'll be watching over the weekend. And if Bitcoin falls, it'll be a great buying opportunity if you're looking to get long. There you have it for the stock market breakdown. So with a poor economic data, the technology stocks just roared. Can we continue into next week? And if we do, look for that upper edge in the Nasdaq to play around 14,000. However, over in the SPX, with about 64 points of move, 4,296, call it 4,300, will play the upper edge in the SPX. So 4,300 and 14,000 are levels to look for in the S&P and Nasdaq. Seeing the VVIX relatively flat on the day, what concerns me going into next week are these bonds. Are these bonds going to rally? Are they going to roll back over? They had a nice pop today, however it quickly gave it back up. So I'll be watching the bonds in next week's tape. But if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like. It means a lot when you guys can show some support. And if you're watching me for the first time, show some love and hit that subscribe button. I love to do macro market breakdowns. I do crypto market breakdowns as well as trending tickers. But on that note, have a great weekend, guys. I will see you on Monday. Take care. Peace.